Welcome back. I'm Steve McGrath, host of Beyond the Helmet, and in this episode, I'm pleased to bring you my conversation with Tommy Bowden. Now, Coach Bowden brought over 30 years of coaching experience to the podcast. He spent 11 plus seasons as a head coach. That's between Clemson, where he was up until Coach Dabo Swinney took over, and he was also the head coach at Tulane, where he took the team to an undefeated season. So Coach brought an incredible wealth of knowledge and wisdom to the show. We talked about his faith, his family, because of course he is the son of Bobby Bowden, famed coach as well. And he was able to just take us to a whole different level about leadership, what it takes to run an organization. And without any further ado, I'm going to stop talking and let you hear Coach Bowden on his journey. But I think maybe to kick this off, it might make the most sense to start with something that's a little bit more timely. I mean, what a year 2020 has been when we have all things COVID related that have completely hampered how a football program would normally run, whether that's recruiting or just getting your team ready for the next season. You know, spring ball essentially got crushed. And then on top of that, all things related to race tensions in this country. If you were to put yourself back, put the coaching hat back on, what advice would you be giving right now to other coaches that are trying to deal with running a program when it feels like on all fronts, there's issues that really haven't been put in the forefront like this in quite a while, if ever, as relating to COVID?
Well, it's really two different issues. The issue of COVID-19 and not practicing, not having your team and do everything pretty much through video and technology. You know, I probably couldn't give any advice because nobody had been in that situation. So not like this is something happened 10 years ago. And when I was a head coach at Tulane, we did this and that. Everybody was on the same playing field as far as COVID-19. Now, the race-related issues is something totally different because, as a player for my father at West Virginia, there was not a lot of minorities on the team. My father took that job, being from the South, perceived as a Southern, head coach or a Southern coach coming up to maybe an area that was a little more progressive with minorities, going through that as a player, then as a young assistant coach and as a coordinator, and then as a head coach of a non-Power 5 and a Power 5, a head coach at a place like Tulane. It's inner city, a little more race relations were a little more prevalent in a bigger city, inner city school, as opposed to a small rural place like Clemson. So those issues, that is one that experience I think would help with coaches. But I think there's coaches now that at the height that this is right now in race relations, I think all coaches are kind of on a new stomping ground, other than maybe David Shaw at Stanford and a minority coach that might have a little bit better understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think more than anything, 2020 has called for coaches to be really good leaders, more so than ever, to unite a team under these circumstances. It doesn't matter what the circumstance, it's just an unforeseen obstacle. Given everything that you had gone through in terms of being that strong leader, what are a couple of things that you think that leader needs in order to be successful?
Well, I think you got to have a tremendous amount of ability to make good, wise decisions, because when you make a decision as a head coach, everybody's looking at you, not only your 9 or 10 or all your support staff that has really grown, expanded over the last few years, but all of your players. And when you make a decision and a statement, you better be decisive, better show confidence, because if I think players can feel insincerity, or a coach that might not be real confident in his decisions. And that's kind of where I was very fortunate. First time head coach at Tulane, I really went in there with a lot of the answers. Tulane, gosh, hadn't had the winning season, I think, in 15 years. I go in there, I think they'd won 5 games maybe in the last 3 years. And but the fact that I'd been around my father, I knew exactly what I wanted to do in winter conditioning. You get the team in December, and the first thing you do with them is winter conditioning. And I knew exactly what I want to do because I'd watched a very successful coach do it. The first discipline issue, I knew exactly how I wanted to handle it with the media and recruiting. So I think from the aspect of leadership, I think one that exudes confidence, I think is really, really important, especially when you take over a new program.
No, I think that's spot on. So this may be an impossible question because I don't know how you sparse the two apart, but how much of that comes from being around your father and watching him run a program versus the years you spent, 15, no, I mean, 20
10 years
years.
as assistant. Yeah. Yeah.
So how much of that is learning on the job for 2 decades versus just being always around it with your family?
There are certain things, like you said, in the 19 years I was an assistant, there are certain X and O's aspects that I picked up that were really instrumental because they were from my father's. I worked for a guy at Alabama named Homer Smith. He has since passed away, but very successful offensive. A lot of people call him a genius. Really, really a sharp coach. I learned a system under Homer Smith, the West Coast offense, for example, that was different than my father's offense. I was exposed to the no huddle, hurry up, hand signals, stuff like that, calling plays from the line of scrimmage with no huddle. Never been done, or my father was never exposed to it, but I learned those things. But the things that involve more so, I think, with leadership as opposed to X and O's, I was very fortunate. The fact that I happened to be a Christian, my father was a Christian, the fact that he was a very successful coach, second winningest coach in the history of at least 1A football. So I learned from him, like I mentioned earlier, what do you do in 108s, winter conditioning, how to handle the media, how to handle discipline, how long do you practice, how much hitting do you do, what about bowl preparation? I knew all those. That was really, really helpful. The fact that I picked up, I taught him, I showed him a no huddle offense. He had a guy named Charlie Ward, who was a Heisman Trophy winner, so I didn't have an X and O. I had X and O background from him, but when I went to Tulane, that's not what I leaned on. It was more something I learned in those 19 years.
Yeah, and just hitting on Tulane for a second, you're able to coach alongside Rich Rodriguez, who ultimately, after you guys have a lot of success at Tulane together, goes on to be a very successful coach. And then later, of course, everyone knows about Dabo and what he's been able to do, Coach Swinney at Clemson. Obviously, I'm sure recruiting is a huge asset that you need to have to be a successful coach, but particularly those two guys, did you see anything that would have allowed you to foresee the future success that they'd have? Any particular skill set or trait that they might have carried?
Well, yeah, there are several. And those two guys, as good a coaches as they are, they're completely different as far as reasons that I surround myself with them. Rich, for example, I was wanting to run somebody. I had a background, no huddle, fast-paced offense when I was at Alabama. I wanted somebody that had a background in that. Rich had a phenomenal background as the head coach up there at Glenville State, small, I think, Division III school in West Virginia. He was breaking all kinds of scoring records. He had married the no huddle, fast-paced offense. So I wanted somebody that background that had success. Rich had that. So I hired Rich more or less for his X's and O's expertise. Though he had been a head coach, he was a good recruiter. He had all those things in his repertoire of coaching skill. But Dabo, for other reasons, when I coached Dabo and hired him at Clemson, but the reason I hired him for his recruiting capabilities. He had a very impressive recruiting resume. Now, I knew his background, I knew him and his wife, Kathleen. He had a lot of intangibles, but again, his number one skill was recruiting. And you mentioned a little bit about that, about the coaches. The team of the best players usually wins. And Dabo, Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Brian Day at Ohio State, they look at how they're ranking recruiting. They rank recruiting very, very high. They got great players. They've got the best players. But you can mess good players up. All you got to do is put them in the wrong place, give them the wrong assignment. So you got to have the X and O's along with great players. And Rich and Dabo both had some ingredients that showed that they possessed both those. Both of them had the ability to recruit. Dabo was more so recruiting. Rich was more so in X's and O's. They both have knowledge in both areas, but one was really highlighted in one field and one was highlighted in the other.
That's very interesting. So you're essentially the CEO when you're the head coach making these calls. how do you weigh, I want more X's and O's here, I want more recruiting there? How do you ultimately try to walk that line of getting that balance?
That's a good question. I think I learned through experience. I was a head coach for 12 years. The longer, my first year as a head coach, I won 7 games. I hadn't done that in 7 years. Next year, I went undefeated. Well, I had all the answers. I was the smartest guy around, undefeated. I get the Clemson job. The longer you're in coaching, I think the more you realize and gain a little wisdom. It's the team with the best players that wins. You better get recruiters. I made a decision about halfway through my coaching career. I had some really novel coaches that were a little bit older that weren't as good recruiters. So I said, listen, if this good players, there's something to that. Tailbacks that can make guys miss, receivers that can jump higher, and defensive backs, quarterbacks that can execute under pressure. So I went with young guys. Young guys that their skill was not so much in knowledge and X and O's, it was in recruiting and building relationships. It's easier for a guy 28 or 29 years old to recruit a player 17, 18 than a guy in his 50s and his 60s. And that's not verbatim, but again, as a general rule of thumb. I think I saw the top 10 recruiters in college football, either 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 were all 30 and under. So you have to walk a fine line because you can get good players, Steve, and put them in the wrong position. And they're never in a position to make good plays, or you can play them out of position. With a great pass rush, all of a sudden you see them dropping in coverage a lot of time as a defensive player. So I think you got to walk that fine line. But I think the sooner you realize in your coaching career that if you had to rank, you had to pick one. Do I want to coach with X's and O's, or do I want a recruiter? I'd pick the recruiter over the X and O guys.
Fair enough. And who knows how many football careers have ended because of a skill set and scheme mismatch. Guys just never getting their chance to shine. Who knows? Too many, in short.
Yeah. Do you remember Jerry Faust? Do you remember that name? High school coach at Moeller High School, strong Catholic, and he got the job at Notre Dame right from a high school coach.
Okay. Faust sounded familiar. Yes.
Yeah, he was a very successful high school coach at Cincinnati Moeller. Strong Catholic, just won, maybe the most successful coach in college football, high school football at that time. He went from a high school coach to the head coach at Notre Dame, maybe the most prestigious, and they had great players. But he used his offense at Cincinnati Moeller. It was very complicated, a lot of shifting this and that, and then it didn't G-Haul. He didn't last very long, but again, possibly a example of not having great players in the right position to be successful. But it's very important.
Absolutely. And I'm sure there's been plenty of college coaches making that jump to the NFL, that whether that run scheme is a little too simplistic, that defenses eat up, they just don't have a chance to get their legs underneath them. But Coach, I wanted to circle back. You had mentioned faith, growing up Christian. I know it's a huge part of who you are. Can you speak a little bit about how you thought that was a recruiting tool, and just in a much broader lens, how you credit that to the level of success you've been able to achieve?
Well, first of all, I'm very serious about it, and it wasn't. It was important in recruiting me that I bring that up, though I didn't do it because I was a Christian. I thought that's kind of one of the reasons that God put me in recruiting, was to maybe used somehow, let my faith somehow be used as an example. But Steve, when you're recruiting the Southeast, there's something called the Bible Belt. I don't know if you've heard it. There's a phrase that originally came out of Chicago about the states where football is pretty much a part of the culture. Not football. Faith is a part of the culture. It's 24/7. Starts up there around Virginia and works through the Southeast, Midwest, Oklahoma, Texas, in that area for some reason called the Bible Belt. When you recruit a young man in the Southeast, there's a good chance somebody in his family, very influential, is going to be a Christian or active in church or attendance that's going to have an impact on that young man. So I didn't do it for that reason. It was important to me to explain to him. But again, I said, yeah, look where I recruited. Most of my jobs, Alabama, Auburn, Florida State, Duke, Kentucky, I coached in the Southeast. I coached in the Bible Belt. I didn't make that stuff up. That's a legitimate part of the culture in that part of the country. Not that it's not in the other, up in the other parts of the country, but it's pretty much 24/7. So when I went into home recruiting, I talked about the mental growth, the physical growth, and the spiritual growth for a player, that I was going to try to have a plan in all three areas. And we would go to church as a team. I was confronted by the ACLU and the FFRF, Freedom from Religion Foundation. But again, I think if you do it smartly, you can find ways to work around that. But I just felt like, Stephen, to be successful for me, I said, 19 years as assistant, I said, man, if I can just do this, if I can get players to make good decisions, I think I can be successful. Pick up the newspaper today and you look at college football, just because of what we're kind of talking about. There's an article every day where somebody's getting in trouble, making a bad decision. So I said, man, if I can just help them make good decisions. Well, what characteristics help them make good decisions? Well, commitment, accountability, responsibility, discipline, sacrifice. You take those 5 things: commitment, accountability, responsibility, discipline, sacrifice. That's the foundation of making good decisions. I need as many resources as I can to help in those 5 areas. NCAA restricts the amount of time you can have them, 20 hours a week. Well, I'm held accountable for them 24/7, but you're only going to give them to me 24 hours a week. Church is a place. I encourage church attendance. Get involved with a local church. It's a building about a group of people about making good decisions. The fellowship of athletes is always big. As I promoted as a coach. It's a group of athletes that were trying to make good decisions. I encourage had Bible studies and Bible reading. It's a book about making good decisions. So I felt like those 5 things, I need as many resources as possible. And Christianity and athletics, he's talking about a great marriage: commitment, accountability, responsibility, discipline, sacrifice. Look at the life of Christ: sacrifice, commitment, accountability, responsibility, and look at athletics. So I thought it was a great marriage. So it's easy for me to marry my faith and sport of football.
Oh, well, you certainly beat me to the CARDS acronym, because I promised I was going to get there. But one thing I wanted to make sure I underscored, because perhaps I didn't when I asked the question, was the Christianity lens that you view the world through is completely authentic. There's nothing about that was used as a tool or a crutch to get somewhere. It's truly who you are. So if in any way that was unclear, I think the reason why it resonates is because it is who you are, and you're not putting on a certain hat to try to make a certain impression.
Now, Stephen, this is what I believe. I believe with all my heart. I know I'm going to heaven because I've done the things that the Bible requires to go. I know I'm going. I know about man's sins and virgin birth and dying. All those things I accept. I know I'm not homesick. I don't want to go tomorrow, but I know I'm going. But I really believe when I die, I have to meet my Maker. And he's going to look at Tommy Bowden and see, find your name in the book of life. Here you are, Tommy Bowden. He's going to say, Tommy, I'll let you become the head coach of Tulane December 1996. You're a head coach for 12 years. Every year you're a head coach, you had 105 players in front of you. And God's going to look at me and say, hey, when you had those players in front of them, did you mention my name? Did you tell them about me? Could they see me through you? I've got to answer them because that's the platform God gave me. So I sincerely felt like that was my responsibility. And that's why God put me in coaching. So I think players sense if it's not sincere.
Oh, I think you're 100% right on that. Regardless of what you're doing, if you're not authentic, eventually it always becomes evident. So, Coach, I actually wanted to bring this back just a couple of years when you were playing football for another strong Christian. That'd be your father when you went to West Virginia. Can you just talk me through just a little bit the decision to go play at West Virginia, how it was playing for your father, and then his decision to leave and go to Florida State while you were there?
Well, the decision was pretty easy because I was a walk-on. I didn't have a lot of options. I think I could have gone to Navy, a couple of just small Division III schools. I had a girlfriend at the time, my wife. I've been married 43 years and started dating my wife when she was a sophomore in high school and I was a junior. So I said, well, guys, I'm just going to stay here and walk on. So I walked on, and my father, you're going to have to earn it. You can't be equal to everybody else scholarship players. You're going to have to be a little bit better because you're my son. And so I walked on, scouting, beat up a whole bunch. And I was scout team running back, scout team wide receiver. You get beat to a pulp back then. You did a lot of hitting, and we wanted guys. So I paid my dues. Gosh, my 4th year. Finally earned a scholarship. Started for my father his last year at wide receiver. We went to the Peach Bowl. Then he left, and I started my last year for a guy named Frank Signetti. But it's one where it's not like he had to beat a bunch of guys to get me to come. I was a walk-on. I was lucky to go. But I went and was not a factor for, I think, my 3rd year. I might have played on special teams a little bit and earned a scholarship. Started my last 2, one for a new guy. But I was very fortunate that when I did get to start, we won. Not because of me. We had good players, but the fact I couldn't look up there and say, "Gosh, he's sitting there playing the sun and they're losing," So
Right.
we happened to win, go to a bowl game. But it was a great experience. But it is unusual, Steve. Back in 1974, my father went 4-7. It's my 3rd year, and he about got fired. And the team so we're gonna have a team meeting without the coaches. They're complaining and moaning. We're practicing too long. We're doing too much hitting. Coach Bowden into this and that. So it was unusual to sit in a team meeting as your father's the head coach. They weren't invited, and they're sitting there critical, of your father and the coaching style and all that. That was probably the most unusual circumstance I had, at least playing for. Especially when I was doing most of the complaining. Get rid of the guy.
Having worked for my dad, I understand exactly what that could be like. Now, I would admit, so going from a walk-on, what better way to become a grad assistant than, of course, by playing there. You're able to get that while your father is not the coach there, but then you're able to join his staff at Florida State, and you're able to start your coaching journey. So I just wanted to ask, do you just have any bits of advice about that coaching arc that so many coaches go on, where you don't know if you have a job next year? You don't know, do I become the quarterback coach there or the tight end coach there? Do you navigated it so well to get to the very top, the Power 5 conference head coach? Do you have any insight on how anyone should be going about something like that?
First of all, I was going to my first full-time job as East Carolina coach in the secondary. I was a graduate assistant at Florida State, got an opportunity to go with a guy named Ed Emery, which is secondary. My father took me to the airport, flying out of Tallahassee to Greenville, North Carolina. And the last thing he told me 2 things. In this profession, you better have patience and you better have perseverance. And it's really, really true, because like you say, there's not a lot of, if you want a safe profession, then you better go sell insurance or do where you can work for 8 to 5. But it's one of like, there's no security. It's very volatile. There's a lot of stress. It's tough on a family. It's tough on a marriage, but he told me patience and perseverance, and you really have to have it, because all of a sudden I've been at several jobs, and all of a sudden you're there for 6 months, head coach is fired, you're out. It's Christmas time. I mean, there's bills to pay. You got a house and all this. So, but again, from a Christian perspective, I'm very fortunate to have a father that was a Christian, because he emphasized a lot about praying to God for clarity about your next move. And I've tried to sit down with my wife. I've tried to sit down with my children as they got older. Anytime I was making a decision about leaving, praying about it and asking God for clarity. And boy, sometimes I said, "Man, God, where are you? Let's get this clarity. Where is it? How come it's taking so long?" And of course, you're older, you learn God's got 3 answers: yes, no, and wait. And sometimes you don't like that wait, but it's a tough profession.
Oh, certainly not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's every year to see the turnover. It's crazy. And I hate to even ask, but I mean, of course, you're very much paying attention to the landscape. You seem like you could jump in tomorrow and be able to plug into some system and make them better. Do thoughts like that ever cross your mind? Like maybe, just maybe, I might be able to help a program somewhere.
Yeah, I kind of told a couple things. I told myself, these guys, you might not remember guys named Frank Broyles and Darrell Royal. Have you ever heard of those guys?
I can't say that.
Well, one was the head coach. Frank was the head coach at Arkansas, very successful. Darrell Royal, head coach at Texas, very successful. They were retired about 55 years old. And I became a head coach. I said, I really can't see myself coaching like my father in his 80s. I think in the mid-50s, I think that's good. So I kept it quiet. I didn't tell you don't want to tell anybody that, and all of a sudden you're trying to recruit a class at your 53, and all of a sudden you're going to leave it. So you're not too vocal about it. So at 54, when I left Clemson, when I was at Clemson, I said, that's kind of what I had in the back of my mind, but I don't want to make the decision for God. I got to let God make the decision. So SEC school called. I was in Clemson, wanted to meet in Atlanta during the SEC convention game. So I drove to Atlanta, met with an AD from the SEC, with somebody called from the Big 12 and somebody from another conference. And instead of saying, I wasn't that interested, you better be able to jump in both feet running 100 miles an hour when you're a head coach. And I didn't quite have that feel, but I didn't want to make the decision for God. I said, okay, I'm going to go to Atlanta. I'm going to meet with them people. I'm going to talk to this AD, this other school, this president, and I'm not going to make the decision for you, but I want you to give me clarity. If you want me, when I was at Clemson, God gave me clarity to leave because the AD came in and knocked at my door and said, we're going to make a change. Well, be clear. So I said, God, if you want me back in, make it clear. And so I didn't express an interest. And after about 2 or 3 years, once you keep saying no, they stopped calling. So I think my days of coaching got over.
Fair enough. Yeah, you see someone like Mac Brown, who was on the desk, behind a broadcast studio for a few years.
Yeah, good friends with him, and was kind of surprised because he's done really, really well, financially secure. He's got a great wife and family, Sally, and but he I guess felt like he hadn't had enough. But it's that little sabbatical that he took is really, really good. Urban Meyer took a sabbatical for about a year. Got out after he left Florida before he went to Ohio State. So, boy, every coach get to. A lot of head coaches have a sabbatical the last 6 months. They'll really refresh. I think that's going to help a lot of coaches that felt like they might have been getting burned out because they've had a lot of time off. But yeah, I was surprised Mac Brown went back.
And with Coach Meyer, since he's already shown he likes a sabbatical here and there, who knows where he may end up?
No doubt about it. Very well could jump back in it. He's younger than I am. I'm 65, and he's 7 or 8 years younger, maybe 10 years younger than I am.
Now, just coaches at different parts of their journey, right? Whether it's a sabbatical or doing something to maybe get completely reinvigorated, look at how different organizations are run. Your brother, a very successful coach, goes into Clemson to be a grad assistant just a couple of years ago to get a up close look at what Clemson's doing now. What did you think about that? And did he ever express how maybe his views have changed since going through that whole experience?
Well, yeah, it's very football, like a lot of things, is a very humbling profession, and he was undefeated at Auburn, national coach of the year, toughest conference, and all of a sudden you're in the Clemson clean locker room with their other GAs after your team practices there on Friday on an away game, you're cleaning up the locker. But he really loved the game, and he still has a fire for it in his heart, which is obvious. To do what he's done with his background, that's obviously he's got fire for the profession. But he really felt like at a place like Clemson right now, offensively, he was a head coach 20-some years old and kind of been married to one system. And so he's got a great opportunity to learn and maybe go out and redefine himself as a Power 5 coordinator or maybe head coach somewhere, or maybe position coach somewhere. So, but yeah, it's a humbling profession, but you talking about being at the bottom. He is at the bottom as low as you can get and back in the college profession. He's been to the top and he's been the bare bottom.
And you hear the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I'm not calling your brother old, but to see someone that seasoned in college football coaching to be so humble as to do that, to get that new perspective and reinvent themselves after that track record is just so rare. You very rarely see someone willing to do that.
Yeah, you're right. And I would think that might be kind of appealing to a certain committee or an AD or a board of trustees that are looking for somebody to say, hey, you're talking about a guy that's been at the top. this guy must really love the game. And I think that's obvious by what he's done. So that might be an asset to him as he looks to resurface.
I'm sure it will. And Coach, I know we're a little up against it here. So to wrap this up, I want to go through this little thing I call the gauntlet. It's just a couple quick hitter questions that I'd love to get your knee-jerk answer on.
All righty.
What's most important in winning? Is it having the number one offense or the number one defense?
Defense wins championships. I'd go with defense.
All right. Now, of course, there's no real right answer here, but what's more important? Is it the players you have or your scheme?
I learned that, players. I learned that when I hired Dabo, and I think he's proved that. So players. I pick players over scheme.
All right. Now, you, of course, have gone through so much as a football coach. So is it possible to pick a favorite football memory?
Gosh, I've had several as a head coach, but yeah, it might be a father and son had never played each other in the history of college football. When I played Clemson played Florida State, and I played my father. And one year we played them. I think at Clemson they were number 3 in the nation. My job was on the line. I had to beat them, and we beat them maybe by 30 points or so. That probably that and the Clemson's biggest game is South Carolina. Lou Holtz was the head coach, and we went into Columbia one time. I think beat them 63-17. So that was probably two of the bigger wins.
Oh, absolutely. And I can't believe I forgot to ask about the Bowden Bowl. I mean, after that happens, what's conversation with Dad like when he takes the L?
It was fun for a while, but I lost the first 4 games. And I said, man, they hired me there to beat them. Then I won the next 4 out of 5. So it meant it completely flipped. He was great at our summer vacations those first 4 years. And then after that first 4 years, he started making me pay for my share of rent, food, and everything else.
That's great. No, Coach, in closing, is there one best piece of advice that you would give?
I would say it'd be those 2 things my father told me. You better have patience and you better have perseverance, because this is a very challenging profession. It's very high profile, and it's very a lot of children, but your own, if you're not careful. So to me, it would be patience and perseverance. I think it helps if you've got a personal relationship with Jesus Christ from a Christian perspective. But again, it's such a secular society. A lot of coaches don't address that issue. But to me, that would be number one, and along with patience and perseverance.
Absolutely. Now, Coach, coming up, assuming everything goes as planned, are you going to be doing any TV, any ACC type of coverage for this coming season?
I did TV for 9 years. For the first 9 years, I got out of coaching and didn't do it last year. Won't do it this year. I think with my father being 90, I got a sister over in Mobile. I have a son in Atlanta. I had to work on Saturdays ever since I've been out of coaching. I had to work. It was a big work day, and I was traveling home at night. So I missed a bunch of good football. I want to go tailgating and enjoy that. I always smell that tailgate. I was too sick to eat before a game. Now I want to finally go tailgate to the school and watch a game and enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, Coach, I hope you enjoy it. You've certainly earned it. And for everyone listening, TommyBowden.com is where they can keep up to date then with what you're doing.
Thanks, Steve. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Coach, so much for taking the time.